As young women, we face many issues, from the pressures of social media to the expectation of society. We see how these issues affect us and our mental health every day. But what about men?
In present day, there doesn't seem to be much acceptance for men to talk about their feelings and mental health as much as there is for women.
We want to investigate, and what better than to speak to men? All different kinds of men with different kinds of lives on different issues that affect them, asking all sorts about what it's like being a man.
Suicide is the biggest killer in men aged 20 to 49.
But why aren't we talking about it?
We're going to find out.
It's Hall, Nat and Liv, and this is the final episode of our documentary series about mental health. Suicide is the biggest killer in men aged 25 to 49. But why?
Over our previous 3 episodes of body image, lad culture and masculinity, we found that although men don't always talk about their mental health, it doesn't mean that they aren't affected by it. We now want to talk to some people who have openly struggled with their mental health and are willing to share their stories with us.
We also wanted to see what organisations and things are in place to support men with their mental health and see how accessible they are.
We went and spoke to Richard and Paul, who tragically lost their brother to suicide, and how it affected their family.
I'm Richard. I'm a science teacher in a secondary school, and I'm here today because one of my brothers, Mike, took his own life a few years ago, and so men's mental health means a lot to us.
Yeah.
I'm Paul. I work in the NHS. Richard's brother, and yeah, I'm here because of what happened with Mike. So I'm one of 12 children. That's a big Irish Catholic family. Grew up in Manchester, and Mike was the 7th of that. I'm the 8th. Richard 6th.
6, yeah.
That's right. So I get it right. And so it was a lot of fun as a kid. But as it got older, things were a little bit harder when you realise you grow up in a very religious household and not quite the same as other people, and education becomes like a very high priority, and you think, Mike wasn't particularly great at exams, and so he struggled a little bit with that when he was younger.
And he took nursing, and he turned out to be an absolutely brilliant nurse, and very, very successful at it, and very influential. And to the extent where he spoke at conferences on compassionate nursing care, and I think his real sort of personality came out through that. He was a very popular uncle. I mean, he had 20 odd nephews and nieces, and he was a very popular uncle, particularly when we all got together as a family, because he was very entertaining, very funny. Yeah, he could mimic my father like no one else.
Do you think you saw the signs of Mike committing suicide?
We had lots of conversations about this sort of thing over the years, and he first struggled with things when he was about 19. That was the only time I would ever have said he was depressed, was when he was 19, but he was properly depressed, needed medication, and was in a real mess. But I wouldn't have said he was depressed when he died. I know other people talk about it in a different way, but we chatted 2 days before he died, and there was, because I was going to China, and he didn't come across at all like he was in that frame of mind at all, not at all. And I know he'd seen mental health people, but he was obsessed with his mental health in a way that, it's funny you're talking about mental health in people men who are older, because he was obsessed with his mental health from about the age of 22. Yeah. He never talked about anything else.
He's quite introspective in that respect.
So, but I wouldn't have said he was depressed, not in a medical way, anyway. I don't think he had bad mental health care. I don't, and I think he had the right access. But would it have been different? I think, if his childhood had been entirely different and he'd grown up in a different environment, then it might have been different. But I don't think you can unpick those sorts of things. I mean, it's interesting, when he died, he financially was fine. He was in a good relationship with someone.
Well, she was lovely. So.
And he, professionally was doing really well. So all the 3 things that normally get men at that age, none of those were happening. I mean, he was on a, doing really well, good trajectory career-wise, and it was, the timing was just like, wow, how did that happen?
After hearing Mike's story and seeing how mental health affected his life through his brothers, Holly is now going to interview Adam Hayes, a stroke survivor who reached out to us to share his story.
My name's Adam Hayes. I'm a hospitality professional and a stroke survivor, and the reason I'm talking to you today about mental health is because I'm a brain injury survivor.
Could you tell us a bit about your story of your mental health?
I've suffered with depression and anxiety all my life, and initially I thought that was down to losing my father at a young age. Then in December of 2013 I had a AVM bleed stroke, which we found out was due to a malformation on my brain, which the neurosurgeons called a birthmark. So it'd been there all my life, and they said that they weren't surprised I had mental health issues because of this malformation.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone can prepare you for the mental aspects of having a stroke or surviving a stroke. And today I'm left with residual right side weakness in my right hand and my right leg. But the major hidden disability I live with are the mental effects of surviving a brain injury. And that is mainly depression and anxiety. You feel like you've lost your manhood in a way. It's quite degrading to have to start again.
Yeah.
When you understand your disabilities and when you understand the things that affect you day to day, it helps. It does help. And then you can start learning coping mechanisms, because how can you cope with something you don't understand?
Yeah.
And I think that's why so many men struggle.
Do you think there's a stigma surrounding men speaking about their mental health?
Yeah, huge stigma. In the last 5 years, I've lost 3 male friends to suicide. I've attempted suicide myself once, which was very soon after my stroke, and I was not in a good place mentally. In fact, I don't remember doing it. That's how ill I was at the time. I didn't know where I was, who I was, what was going on, and that's quite scary. I feel there's a lot of pressure on young men these days that is unfair. I know there are talk helplines and such, but I still feel that there's too much of a stigma attached to men to reach out to those channels.
You do a lot of work for stroke charities. Have you always wanted to help in the community?
Do you know what? I very quickly started fundraising after my stroke. It was one of the first things I did, and the reason was because I didn't want to give up and I needed something to go at. Once I got going, I met some amazing people through doing it, and it's given me a lot of positivity back in my life and given me reasons to carry on.
After hearing these stories, we needed to discuss where to go next.
Hey!
Hi!
Hey!
So, throughout this investigation, we thought it was crucial to speak to those who've been directly impacted by mental health struggles. Speaking to Adam Hayes and Richard and Paul, we got 2 very different perspectives. Adam shares his very real yet ongoing struggle with his mental health, whereas Richard and Paul are living with the after effects of their brother taking his own life, directly impacting their own mental health through bereavement.
Yeah, I think something that I really took from this is that I always thought that if people had access to help, they'd be able to overcome their mental health struggles. But now I see how naive that view really was. Mental health is such a complex and personal thing that it takes work and the desire to get better to be able to get better. We just need to make sure there are support systems in place to help people.
Our next step is to find out what support there is to help people who are struggling with their mental health. Is there any medical support, or are there non-clinical support systems in place to help people? What and who is there to assist?
This prompted our search, where we found the Compassion Initiative. It's an organisation set up by a small group of young people to provide non-clinical mental health support by those who are affected themselves. Through Instagram, they share stories and advice to encourage people to open up about their mental health and break the stigma. I went to speak to them about why they do what they do. So could you just introduce yourselves to me, please, and tell me what you do for the Compassion Initiative?
So I'm Sam Starmer, and I do a lot of the video stuff with the Compassion Initiative.
I'm Harry Johnson. I founded the Compassion Initiative 6 months ago.
So are you the whole team, or do you have more people?
There's actually 6 of us. There's 3 of us who I would describe as core members. So that's me, Sam and Xander.
So what is the Compassion Initiative and why did you set it up?
So at the roots of the Compassion Initiative was a way for me to be articulate and to kind of speak out for people who can't speak out. But now it's kind of manifested into more of a platform for people to be articulate themselves, to express how they're feeling, a way that we can spread positive mental health education.
So like one of our main issues is that everything's too clinical. So our aim is to make things a bit more just inclusive for everyone, so everyone can understand it, as if it's just scrolling through your Instagram feed.
So what was the inspiration behind the name for the Compassion Initiative?
Because people don't always need advice, people need people to be compassionate, people need them to identify with them, or if not identify, then empathise. Utilising that virtue more in the world would make the world a better place, and that's why compassion is my initiative. Well, I think the power of change is within the people. So for me, it's about, I want mental health care to be accessible, I want the conversation to be open, I want people to be free to express themselves and to articulate how they feel. I don't want people to be inculcated to do things they don't want to do and trapped in their own heads. That's where we need the people, the support.
Yeah, starts with everyone else joining in on what you guys have started.
After hearing what Harry and his team do to support young people through social media, we wanted to discover other ways that men can find support within a non-clinical environment. We were introduced to Stag Digbeth, an urban barbershop and bar that is finding unique ways to support men's mental health. They want to encourage men to open up about their feelings and provide support without taking them out of their own environment to make it a little less scary. Liv met with Ethan to discuss their work further.
So my name's Ethan Webb and I work for Stag Digbeth.
So how long have you worked with them?
So myself and Ben, a business partner who is round, we started this place back in March 2019.
We've heard that you are trying to do some stuff for mental health and sort of promoting better mental health and men speaking about mental health. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a bit about why you've decided to sort of start this initiative with Stag?
I think it's almost a responsibility of us as barbers, really, who have kind of a privileged position to have conversations with men that they might not necessarily have elsewhere. Whereas barbers, it's quite a unique situation where you're unintentionally confidential. And because they trust you with their haircut, it's weird, people kind of open up. And I feel that I've had some situations where people have said things to me about their mental health that I wasn't adequately prepared for. And I feel that we should have that.
Yeah.
We should have those skills to be able to help those people. It makes no sense to be presented with problems and not find a way to help solve them.
So what is it that you are trying to do as a barber?
We've taken part in a mental health awareness training course. Off the back of that, we're going to start doing some like coffee mornings, so fundraising coffee mornings, but at the same time we're going to have a member of Birmingham Mind on site, so if someone has a haircut and they want to have a chat with somebody after, it's an easy, comfortable location that they can just drop into. Yeah, it's not outside of their comfort zone, so they still feel quite comfortable in talking about it. But then after that, the plan is to put myself and the other barbers through some mental health first aid training, just so that we know exactly how we can adequately help people who might be in serious need of support. During Movember, we sold a cocktail called Flat Topper, it had a little moustache in it, so every cocktail that we sent, we donate 50% of the profits to Movember. I'd like to make this place into somewhere that people feel a part of and people feel comfortable to come and talk to us. We want everybody to feel they can come in, old, young, you know what I mean, wherever you come from. If you come in here, everyone's just on a level, everyone's on a good vibe, and we all just want to have fun and feel good.
Do you feel like you've made a difference already with the amount of training that you've had so far?
I've had a couple of people who've started to ask me questions about it, like, so where can I find out more information, or is there anybody around here who we can talk to, or this and that. So just by having that conversation about saying, we've done the training, we've done some training, people are already like, oh, okay, well, what do you think this could be then, or what do you think that could be? So it just gives people a little bit more confidence to talk to us about it. So I definitely think it's the right way to do it, and it's the right way to let people know that we've had that training.
We were really inspired by the work that Stag Digbeth and the Compassion Initiative do, and the new ways that they're finding to support men's mental health. However, clinical mental health support is imperative for so many people to overcome struggles with their mental health. But for some reason, men just aren't accessing it. Liv spoke to our expert Debbie about why this is the case and about other ways that men can get help.
Although we're seeing emerging trends of young people being more comfortable with opening up, it is still more females that are getting help. Last year, I think only 38% of referrals from GP to certain talking therapies were for males. I think what's important though is guys realising that they don't have to go to their GP. It's a good thing to do, but go online, find organisations that might be able to help you. Organisations such as CALM, Men's Mental Health Forum, Mind, Papyrus, calmzone.net. That there are many ways to do it.
So there's lots of different ways for people to get help, but do you think it's quite accessible?
It's becoming more accessible, because you can get help in your living room. You can get help online, peer-to-peer help, but trained counsellors help. For instance, calmzone.net especially focus on men's mental health, and between 5 o'clock and midnight, men can access a mental health professional who can talk to them about their situation. They don't have to feel alone during those hours. So just doing a quick Google search for men's mental health will show you a lot of organisations which are really focusing on male mental health and how you can reach out in your living room. And again, let's embed this into every part of our lives. Let's talk about it. Let's have a chat openly in this way. Is what you're doing is brilliant. But let's have a chat at the rugby, at the football, at the pub, in the supermarket, on our settee.
Yeah. From investigating our 3 topics, body image pressurises men to look a certain way, lad culture pressurises men to act a certain way, and masculinity pressurises men to be a certain way. Throughout all 3 topics, pressure is prominent in everything, and it's pressure from society. Everyone we spoke to agreed that that pressure shouldn't exist. So if that's everybody's opinion, why is it still there?
Throughout the series, our mental health expert Debbie Massey guided us through the issues that men face and helped us understand why there is a stigma surrounding men's mental health. We found out some very shocking statistics about men's mental health through our series.
We want this series to bring awareness to this much needed topic and to find out why suicide is the biggest killer in men aged 20 to 49. The simple answer? That men face a lot of pressure and it's simply not talked about enough. We want this series to encourage men to open up and talk about their feelings, and for them to know that there is no shame in asking for help if you need it. Seeing the works that the likes of Stag Digbeth and the Compassion Initiative do confirms to us that although there is still a massive stigma surrounding men and their mental health, there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
People are trying to break this ideology and are finding ways to support men to combat the jarring suicide statistic. As 3 women, we set out to investigate men.
And throughout the past 4 months, we learnt more than we ever could have expected. From fitness to fashion, from lads to businessmen, we got a peek into what life is like as a man.
And what did we learn?
That the world needs to know
that men can cry too.